The rope burned against her wrists long before the stones beneath her feet did, but pain had already become a familiar companion. What cut deeper than the rope, deeper than the whispers, deeper than the shouting voices, was the silence inside her chest, the silence where hope used to live. She had once walked this same town square with her head held high, her hands full of bread for neighbors, her smile warm enough to soften even the hardest hearts. Now, those same hands were bound, that same square echoed with curses, and those same neighbors stood watching as if she were already dead. Infertile, they spat, as if the word itself were proof of guilt. In their eyes, she was no longer a woman, no longer human, just a bad omen wrapped in dust and shame. The town elders stood on the raised platform, their faces carved from tradition and fear. They spoke of ancient laws, of curses passed down through generations, of a woman's worth measured by the children she bore. No one questioned them. No one dared. Tradition had teeth, and it bit hardest those who were weakest. As she was dragged forward, memories flickered like dying candles, the day she was married, the laughter, the promises, the prayers whispered into the night. She remembered kneeling beside her husband, begging the heavens for a child that never came. She remembered how his silence grew heavier each year, until one morning he left without a goodbye, leaving her alone with blame she never earned. The crowd roared as she stumbled, her knees hitting stone. Children laughed because they didn't know better. Adults looked away because they did. Fear ruled them all. Then, at the edge of the square, beyond the shouting, stood a man no one truly knew. They called him the Mountain Man. He lived where the roads ended and the air grew thin, where storms spoke louder than people. He rarely came into town, and when he did, no one met his eyes. He was rough, scarred, silent, a man shaped by wind and survival, not opinions. He watched as the rope tightened. He watched as the woman fell. He watched as the crowd chose cruelty over courage. Something shifted in him, something older than law, stronger than tradition. He stepped forward. At first, no one noticed. Then the crowd quieted, confused by the sound of boots moving against stone. The Mountain Man said nothing. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. He simply walked toward the woman, pulled a blade from his belt, and with one clean motion, cut the rope. Gasps tore through the square. The elders shouted. Guards reached for weapons. But the Mountain Man stood between them and the woman, his presence unmovable, his silence louder than their screams. She's done nothing wrong, he finally said, his voice low and steady. And neither have you, unless you let this continue. The town square held its breath. Right finger if stories like this move you, don't forget to subscribe, because every hero's story deserves to be told. The silence after the rope fell was heavier than the noise before it. The woman collapsed, not from weakness, but from shock, from the sudden realization that someone had seen her as human again. The Mountain Man didn't touch her. He didn't need to. His stand alone was enough. The elders raged, calling him an outsider, a savage, a man who didn't understand their ways. He listened, unshaken. When they finished, he spoke again, not with anger, but with truth. I was born in this town, he said. I left because I saw how fear disguises itself as faith. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Faces shifted. Doubt cracked the stone walls of certainty. He told them stories, of women in other villages who bore no children but saved lives, taught generations, healed the sick, and carried wisdom deeper than bloodlines. He asked one question that shattered everything. If worth is measured only by childbirth, then what is your worth when compassion dies? One by one, people lowered their heads. A woman stepped forward. Then another. Then a man. The crowd that once demanded punishment now faced itself, and it wasn't ready for the reflection. The elders stepped down from the platform, smaller than before. The woman who had been dragged stood up on her own. Dust covered her dress, but her spine was straight. She looked around the square, no longer begging for mercy, no longer seeking approval. She was free, not because the town forgave her, but because she no longer needed it. The Mountain Man turned to leave, disappearing back toward the mountains, carrying nothing but the quiet knowledge that one act of courage can break generations of cruelty. And the town. It was never the same again. Right finger subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about justice, courage, and humanity, because silence changes nothing, but stories can change everything.